Have you ever wanted to create your own spell? GameMasters here, and yeah, have you ever been on an adventure, dug through your spell book or list of spells that you have access to and thought, I'd like to craft up my own spell? I mean, Fireball is nice, but I want something different, something unique. Well, provided you work with your DM, there are actually tools in place to do exactly this, and in today's video, we are going to explore those tools and craft up a spell together. Now, your spell will likely be different than the one we craft up in today's video, but I want to include you all in crafting this specific spell up, so I'm going to purposely leave a couple of details out that you can all help fill in as we go. First, however, we need to check out some of the basic guidelines. On page 283 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a guideline of sorts, and it suggests a few things to consider. First is that if a spell is so good that the player would use it all the time, that it might be too powerful. Now, listen, I'm going to call BS on this guideline. Magic Missile, it's a first level spell. Most players with access to evocation spells, they're going to grab it and cast it pretty much every chance they get. Now, I think we can safely ignore this specific guideline. Second, a long duration or large area can make up for a lesser effect, depending on the spell. Okay, fair enough. And the spell I want to create will certainly have a large area effect, but the duration won't last too long. So we'll see how this guideline comes into play. Third, avoid spells that have very limited use. They give an example of creating a spell that works only against good dragons, that not many would bother learning it, as it is going to be for only effective for very specific situations. The way I see it, we're crafting up a spell that will have a specific purpose. So again, here, I think we can somewhat ignore this particular guideline. Fourth guideline, they say, is make sure the spell fits the identity of the class. Okay, and this makes sense. They even cite that wizards and sorcerers generally do not have access to healing spells, which is typically reserved for clerics. Okay, sure, again, that makes sense. Then the section in the DMG goes into spell damage. I don't think our custom spell is going to do any damage, but if we all decide that it's going to, and it should, then this section states that we can use the spell damage table to see an approximate amount of damage that the spell can do at its given level. Likewise, it also states that you could instead use the spell damage table to determine the amount of healing that a spell would do in the event that you're crafting up a healing spell. Cool. Now, not much of these guidelines are really going to apply to the spell that we are all going to create up, but they are still good guidelines to keep in mind, just in case. You never know what path we're going to go down here. The spell we're going to craft up today is going to be called Eclipse. And remember, as we go through its creation, feel free to pause the video, make a note or a comment down below in the comments, and I'll explain a bit later exactly how you all are going to help me shape this into an actual functioning spell. Here is what our Eclipse spell is going to do. When cast, it will cause a moon to blot out the sun. Creatures in the area that oppose the caster and the party will roll with disadvantage, while the party rolls with advantage. We'll assume that the caster and the party have communicated and they won't be caught off guard at this celestial event. Further, there is a 25% chance that the enemy will look up at the eclipse and have the blinded condition. Now, that might be a touch redundant because blinded would make it so that attack rolls against that creature have advantage and the creature's attack rolls have disadvantage. But I'm wondering if we could get away with adding a third die. So like disadvantage, roll 3 die and use the lowest. Or for advantage, again, against it, roll 3 die and use the highest. Also, should we make a save roll of some sort to see if the creature won't suffer from disadvantage? Okay, so here's a few more things that we need to know. What level should this spell be? And I'm thinking kind of 8th level, but what about the school? My initial instinct is to go with evocation because we're calling forth something elemental into nature, but it could be categorized under conjuration because we're conjuring it up. Now, this will really be a moon, really a moon that passes in front of the sun, so we can rule out at the illusion school. But what about transmutation? Could we have it be from multiple schools? But though if we did that, would that require the caster to multitask? And I'm not sure I'm a fan of that aspect. I don't like multiclassing too much. Maybe we should just stick to one school. How long should the casting time be? I mean, it should take some concentration, right? We are causing a major celestial event to take place, but two, we want to have reasonable access to the spell's effect if we find our party in a combat situation. So, I don't know, is a 5-minute casting time okay? For range, and this one's going to be a bit tricky. According to NASA, the Eclipse from 2017, the totality of it spanned about 65 miles wide. The one taking place on April 8th, 2024 is going to span about 116 miles wide. So what if we said the range was, I don't know, 100 miles? And here's the thinking. When this spell is cast, even though the party won't be privy to things going on even a mile away, let alone 100 miles away, NPCs and whatnot will likely be speaking of this event, which we'll cover in a moment. I've got a fun little twist that I want to add to the spell as we move through this. For components, I'm thinking it needs to be verbal, somatic, and also have a material component. But what material? A moonrock, perhaps? But what else, if anything? For duration, so the 2017 Eclipse lasted for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The 2024 Eclipse is going to last for 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Again, just the totality of it. So I'd say if we could have our spell have a duration of, I don't know, 4 minutes, does that sound right? But something there doesn't quite sit right. I mean, if it takes 5 minutes to cast, it's only going to have a duration of 4 minutes. I don't know. What do you guys think? Now, a moment ago, I mentioned that I had a fun little twist to add to this spell. But before we jump into that, I first want to thank these celestial supporters, as their help with the channel has been above and beyond, and I cannot thank them enough. They have made it so that I don't have to take on a sponsored ad for this particular video. And in my book, that's awesome. If you would like to contribute, if you've liked this video, and if you'd like to see how you can become a Patreon or YouTube member, I'll leave a link down in the description. But too, clicking the thumbs up button and subscribing also helps the growth of this channel. Okay, so for the fun little twist. With a celestial event of this size and magnitude, something that can span about 100 miles, it's very likely that villagers and other creatures, NPCs, monsters, and what have you, are going to be a touch freaked out by this. Two, there could easily be some scientific folk, scholars from perhaps Strixhaven, that have predicted the next eclipse, but that this particular eclipse, the one that we just cast, wasn't among their predictions, which could easily cause a fair amount of chaos. This is where the Dungeon Master can take a touch of freedom with this spell, perhaps treat it as a regional effect. Let's give an option of at least 4 possibilities, of which all 4 could potentially happen, but at least one of them will. I've added in 2 possible options, temporal flux and celestial disruption, but we can certainly change those and, of course, add in the 2 missing ones. Temporal flux would cause time to kind of go a touch crazy within the region. Time might speed up or slow down, which could cause plants to grow and wither rapidly. Creatures might age or de-age momentarily, and it might cause other spells to have longer or even shorter durations. Celestial disruption can cause the connection between the material plane and the celestial realms to be blocked, resulting in divine magic to become unpredictable. For example, spells or abilities granted by deities may fail, or they may produce a completely different result. We don't have to stick with those. We can completely change them if you'd like, but I think at least 4 options, that really helps to round this spell out. Now, here's what I want from all of you watching. Let's all fill in the missing elements, and let's feel free to alter parts that we don't feel will fit. But I do want to keep the core of the spell intact. We are bringing forth an eclipse, and enemies will suffer disadvantage while you and your party gain advantage. Let's go crazy with the ideas down in the comments, and once we've settled on a final version of this spell, I'm going to push it out as a downloadable PDF for anyone to grab and use. Now, I'd like to aim for having this done by, say, the end of this month. It's April, so I'll make the final Eclipse spell available on April 30th. I'm going to pin that to I'll turn that into a PDF, and I'm going to pin that as the top comment. So again, go crazy with it down in the comments. Let's make this a fun and wicked spell. And until next our paths cross, should you see the sky darken anytime soon, just know that it's me testing out the various effects of the Eclipse spell.